Okay, sit yourself onto your left and then come into a good cross leg position. Let's have a little wiggle about, just make sure that you feel as though you're sitting evenly. Hold on to your knees and elevate the chest up towards the ceiling. Just look down at the floor, look at something that's not moving. Just focus on long, slow, deep, deliberate inhalations and exhalations. And then bring your hands into Namaste, keeping your eyes still in the sockets, just looking at something that doesn't move. Lengthen from your armpits into your elbows, from your elbows into the heels of your hands, from the heels of your hands into the fingertips. And then with an exhalation, allow your eyes to gently close. So even though your eyes are closed, aim to keep your eyeballs still in the sockets. Listen to the sound of the breath as it enters and as it exits. Just focusing on long, slow, deep, deliberate inhalations and exhalations. Just focus on filling the lungs from the bottom to the top and emptying your lungs from the top to the bottom. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude for something or someone or somewhere. Hold on to that feeling of abundance in the heart area, and then release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. Bring the tip of the index finger with the tip of the thumb. spend a moment just to observe your energy. Just acknowledging the demonstration of wisdom and bodily intelligence and peacefulness in the hands that we can carry into our practice. And then allow your eyes to gently open, raising your head, and then hold onto your knees, lift up into the chest, elevating the heart area up to the ceiling. Take a deep inhalation and then turn to the right side, drawing your abdomen across your ribs and your shoulders, keeping your neck still, just looking forwards with the head. Just observing your resistance, just acknowledging and respecting your resistance. And then come back to the center, hold on to your knees, lift up into the chest, take a deep inhalation in through the nose. And with an exhalation, turn to the left, drawing your abdomen across. Using each exhalation to turn a little more deeply into the pose. Just being present inside the pose, observing your body's response to the pose, not just where you expect it to be, but just be willing to scan the body for areas of resistance and of freedom. And then come back to center. Come off your lift and then sit down onto your heels, big toes together, your knees apart. Just let the shins stretch into position. Feel that the shins can really sink into the floor. If you're on a soft floor, like so I've got a carpet on here, so that's kind of more easy to access than a hard floor. So if you've got a hard floor, perhaps your shins don't make contact with the floor brilliantly. So then lift the front of the knee and draw it away from the shin so that you can really press the shins down into the floor. Lift up into the heart area, make really good contact with the shins into the ground, and try and maintain that contact as you come forward, lengthening forward, keeping the head lifted. So we never do forward bends with the head. The head is always the last thing to come forwards. Breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. And then finally bring the forehead down, but try and keep the seat bones down on top of the heels. Just breathe even deep inhalations and exhalations, drawing the tailbone down towards the heels, drawing the sacrum down towards the heels. Listen to the breath. Listen to the sound of the inhalation and the exhalation.
drawing the sacrum down towards the heels. Spread your fingers, spread your palms. And then come up onto your knees, turn your toes under, and then come up into dog down. Breathing even deep inhalations and exhalations, listening to the breath. Turn the fronts of the shins inwards. Activate your legs, tightening the kneecaps. Turn the shins inwards. Turn the inner knees towards the back of the room. Turn the fronts of the thighs inwards. Just spend a moment in the pose just to observe, feeling the sensation within the pose, just listening to the breath. Step your feet forwards, just come up into a standing position. And then have your blocks for your hands. And your feet as wide apart as your mat. Turning the toes inwards. Have your hands and your hips lift up into the chest. Squeeze the elbows in towards each other so that you really activate the shoulder blade region and you broaden the chest. Keeping the hands on the hips, keeping the head lifted as you come forwards. Hinge at the hips and then reach down, keeping the head lifted. So you see all the time when I'm teaching in the room with people, when they're trying to come forwards into any kind of forward bend, and everyone tries to bring their head forwards first, but actually the head is the last thing that should come forwards in a forward bend. You should lift from the abdomen to the diaphragm to the chest and bring the chest forwards, keeping the head lifted. So in Uttanasana, that's the same approach. We should start on a high lift, stay there if you've got back problems. If you feel like your back is okay, then you can go down a little lower. But you're trying to extend the chest away from the legs. We're trying to activate the legs so that there's even action. Activate the legs so that you're conscious of where your weight is in your feet. Can you hit your weight back into your heels? So that your weight consciously draws into the heels and then lift the chest a little higher. If you can reach down to the floor, then do. But never at the expense of bending the knees or rounding the back or dropping the head. So even if you can come forward further, holding onto the backs of your heels and drawing your body through the space between the two legs, the head always comes last. So we're just trying to draw the chest through the gap between the legs. Just observe how that feels for your back. the head lifted as you come forward. Activating your legs evenly. Just draw your attention into the feeling of the pose. And through that feeling of the pose, can you generate an image of the body? Like a heat map of action. Observing where there are areas of cold. I don't mean cold in temperature, I mean cold in the lack of action. Bend your knees on the way up if you need to. Bring your hands into your hips and then come up into a standing position. So just stand in tadasana, inner edge of your feet together, and lift your chest, lift out of the feet up into the legs, into the chest, into the neck, into the head, lengthening the shoulders away from your ears. Just breathing even deep inhalations and exhalations. Your arms out nice and wide in toward your chest, and then step or jump your feet nice and wide. Stretching your arms out, turn your left toes in, your right leg and foot all the way out, facing the front, and then come down and find your trikonasana, looking up. So just observe your pose. Just observe your pose from the feeling of the pose. Looking up, you can't see the physical body, but can you see the physical body through the feeling of the pose? Can you feel where the feet are? In 3 dimensions, can you feel where the front leg hip is? Is it sticking out, or can you squeeze it in forwards? Can you lift the chest? Just look down at the foot. Is your head over the foot? Or is it kind of poking into the middle of the room? Come back to the center, swap the feet around, and come over to the other side. Again, looking up. So this pose is really good for this time of year where I get a little bit sinusy in the mornings. It's a good sinus clearer. Just looking up, breathing evenly. Come back to the center, bring the feet parallel, and then step, jump the feet back together, come back into tadasana. Just spend a moment to observe the sensations of the physical body. Just listening to the breath. Again, just observing the feeling of the body like a heat map. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards your chest, and then step
or jump. Go nice and wide with your legs a little wider than for trikonasana. Turn your left toes in, your right leg and foot all the way out. Bring the chest to face the front. Spread your toes really wide, especially at that back foot, trying to keep that outside edge of the back foot down as you bend the front knee. Try not to let your weight lunge into that front leg. Bend that knee, but keep that outside edge of that back foot firmly down, lifting the instep of that back foot, turning this back leg all the way out, turning the front leg all the way out, lifting up into the spine, out of the hips. Virabhadrasana 2. Straighten the leg, swap the feet around, turn the right toes in, the left leg and foot all the way out. Just making sure you're wide enough. Just feel the feet as they are on the floor. Lift up into the chest. Keep that back leg really straight. Keep the outside edge of that foot consciously down as you bend the front knee. Lifting the instep of that back leg, turning the legs from the inside out. Find a right angle. Look over the middle finger of the left hand. Breathing even and deep inhalations and exhalations. And then straighten the front leg, bring the feet parallel. And then step or jump the feet back together. Come back into tadasana. Just breathe even. Deep inhalations and exhalations. Just feeling the energy of the legs. Just lifting up into the chest. Just feeling how you wake up the body. Just feel how your feet connect to the ground. Where does your kind of default feet go? So if I am not observing my feet, then my feet will naturally roll onto the outside edge of the foot, and the inner heel becomes really light. And that kind of makes sense because I've twisted my ankles hundreds of times in my lifetime, and it's because of that. So if I turn the shins inwards, if I turn the inner knees towards the back of the room, then I can activate the inner foot. I can bring my weight into the center of the heel, which is where it should be. So it's good to just observe what we do when we're not observing. So just keep the feet together. Just lift up into the chest and just observe the feeling of the body. Keep your eyes open, but draw your vision inwards. Through the feeling of the pose, just listen to the breath. Listen to the pose through the feeling of the pose. So at the same time as drawing your vision inwards, draw your vision outwards, acknowledging that perhaps you look through the center of the eye. So acknowledge, without moving the eyes in the sockets, acknowledge the upper eye vision. And again, without moving the eyes in the sockets, acknowledge the lower eye vision. And then the outer eye vision. And acknowledge how that maybe changes the way that you observe the sensations of the physical body. Does it sharpen or distract? Just listen to the breath. Just maintaining that sense of inward lift from the feet into the shins, into the kneecaps, into the thighs, turning the fronts of those legs inwards so that the backs of the thighs turn outwards, so that you soften the gluteus muscles in the buttocks. Lengthen the tailbone down and forwards without disturbing the legs. Draw the abdomen to the spine, lift the abdomen to the diaphragm to the collarbone, lengthening from the shoulders into the fingertips. Breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards the chest, and then step or jump the feet nice and wide. Have a block where you can reach it on the right side of the foot. Turn the left toes in, the right leg and foot all the way out. So what's happened to your tadasana? Of course, your legs are wider apart, but can you maintain that lift of the legs? Can you maintain that lift up into the spine? That sense that the whole body is working as one. Bend that front leg, but keep the back leg, keep the outside edge of that back foot down on the floor. Reach down and find the floor or the block. So the block gives you lots of space, so it's worth using that sometimes. And then draw the abdomen across up to the ceiling. Draw the top shoulder towards the back of the room, and then reach up and over. I run out of ceiling height here, so my arm isn't quite in the right place, but you can still get that stretch. Look underneath the armpit, up to the ceiling. Breathe in and out through the nose. What's happened to that tadasana? Come back to the center, bring the feet parallel, and just reset your tadasana where it is. Just release your hands, just get hold of your block, put it on the other side if you used it. Just reset your tadasana, have the inner edge of the feet parallel. Lift up into the chest. Turn your right toes in, all your left leg and foot all the way out. And then again, find your tadasana. The big difference with tadasana and this pose is that the legs turn outwards rather than inwards, because the hips are facing the front. Lift up into the chest, keep that outer edge of the foot pressing down, find the bend of the knee, and then reach down, find the block or the floor, draw the abdomen across, and then reach up and over, parsvakonasana. But where is your tadasana within the pose? If you can't find it, use the block, go a little higher. Find that action of the legs, find the action of the spine, of the arms, that inner vision. come back to the centre, bring the feet parallel, and then step or jump the feet back together, and then come back into tadasana. Just return into your tadasana. Just listening to the breath. Just focusing on long, slow, deep, deliberate inhalations and exhalations. Just observing the energy of the pose. And then just come down onto your knees. Just sit back on your heels for a moment. Just wriggle into your hips. Just pressing the shins into the floor, lifting up into the heart area. Just observing your energy, how your energy has changed. Just come up onto all fours, have your hands shoulder width apart this time. Spread your fingers, spread your palms, turn your toes under. And then come up into dog down. Find that tadasana in your dog down. So that this time you turn the legs inwards, like you do in tadasana. Just find your internal balance. Again, the eyes can probably see the legs and not very much else. So use the feeling of the pose to know where the body is in 3 dimensions. To know that the hips are level, to know that the spine is extending evenly. And then come down, back onto your knees, sitting back on your heels. Again, just observing how your body is feeling, just observing the difference in the lightness of the body. Excuse me. And then just sit in cross legs. Just come into cross legs either directly on the floor or sitting on the lift if you struggle to lift up into the chest. So just have a little wriggle about, make sure that you feel as though you're sitting evenly. Just hold onto your knees and lift up into the chest, drawing your shoulders down. Just spend a moment to just settle the eyes on something that doesn't move. And draw your chin forwards and down to make contact with the chest. Jalandhara bandha. And then lift mula bandha, raising the anal sphincter up towards the diaphragm region. And then just observe your breath. Observe the breath as it enters, filling the lungs from the bottom to the top. And exhaling from the top of the lungs to the bottom. Inhaling from the bottom of the lungs to the top and allowing the energy of that pose to overflow into the legs and the arms and the torso. Maintaining Mula Bandha and Jalandhara Bandha. So whether your eyes are open or closed, just feel where the body is in 3 dimensions. Using that sensation of action to observe where the body is in relation to the rest of the body. And then gently with an out breath release Mula Bandha, release Jalandhara Bandha, and then raise your head. So we're going to do Adho Mukha swastikasana. So have a couple of blocks in front of you for your hands and just stay in your swastikasana or your half padmasana. If you've got a bad back, it's better to just stay at this stage, just working to lift the heart area upwards. Otherwise, you're going to lift the abdomen really consciously up into the diaphragm and then come forwards, but coming forwards with the head last. Come forwards with the abdomen and the ribs and the chest, and then find the blocks for your hands and walk them away so that you get in a good forward bending action. Pressing the palms into the floor, lifting up into the chest, keeping the head lifted, aiming to keep the seat bones down on the heels. You can bring the blocks lower, or you can bring the hands all the way to the floor. So if you're in half padmasana, the abdomen gets a good massage with that upper foot. Just breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, listening to the breath. And then come back to the center. Just hold onto your knees. And then swap the crossing of the legs. So do half padmasana the other way, or swastikasana the unnatural way. So just crossing the legs in the way that you normally wouldn't. So initially that might feel a little unusual in the seat bones, so just adjust the position of the buttock flesh a little so that you can find levelness, because the first thing that usually you'll notice is that maybe you feel like you're kind of sitting lopsided, but you're not. Well, you could be, but it tends to suggest that on the other side maybe you sit lopsided on that side as well, but you just got used to it. So find that levelness in the seat bones using your sense of observation. Observation and activation. Lift the abdomen up to the diaphragm, up to the collarbone, and then come forwards again using those blocks to start off with. That's always a good starting point, just to help you keep the head lifted, and then maybe come down. So if you're in half padmasana, the other side of the abdomen gets a good massage with that upper foot. Drawing the tailbone down to the floor, lifting up into the chest. Just listening to the breath. And then bring your hands back to the center, and then hold onto your knees, lift up into the chest. Just breathing even deep inhalations and exhalations, lifting out of the seat bones up into the chest. Just observing your seat bones for balance. And then turn to the left, sorry, to the right side. Turn to the right, doesn't really matter, just whichever way you turn first. Turn to the right typically first, if we can. As you turn, just observe how the seat bones might feel different because we're crossing the legs in a different way to normal. So try and accommodate the weight of the seat bones. Come back to the center. Just reset in the center and then turn to the left. Using the back hand, digging it into the floor to maintain the lift of the chest. So trying to maintain your attention within the pose. And then come back to the center. Just come down onto your back into supta, baddha konasana. You can have the blanket for underneath your head. Just come down onto the floor, pull the feet in towards the seat bones, and then just rest your head down onto the folded blanket. Rest your hands on your lower ribs and just observe your breath. Just focusing excuse me, on long, slow, deep, deliberate inhalations and exhalations. Just allowing the body to rest into the floor but keeping the feet firmly pressing together. If it's stiff, if it's uncomfortable in your hips, then then put some blocks underneath the outsides of your thighs. Just feel how the body makes contact with the ground. So we try to develop a sensory experience through our practice. We don't just put ourselves into odd positions. We aim to feel the pose from the inside, continually looking for balance, internal balance, balance of effort and action. And when we find imbalance, then we aim to address it. Maybe there's one side that releases and the other side that doesn't. So try and even that out, either by letting go as much as you can on one side or by reactivating the other side, so that you reactivate the internal balance of the pose. Because although we're talking about balance, which isn't necessarily the balance of standing on one leg, where there's potential that you might fall over if you lose that balance, this is internal balance. This is the observation of pose. So even something as simple as supta baddha konasana, we can still work to maintain our balance. So this shouldn't be just a flop into the floor. If it is, then that's okay, but are you in full observation of the feeling of the pose? Does it feel balanced? Does it feel balanced, or are you telling yourself that it feels balanced? Take your observation into the seat bones, into the spine, into the shoulders, into the arms, into the feet, into the legs. And observe it. Aiming for subtle changes in the pose to maintain that sense of internal balance, or to restore it. And then gently draw your knees together. Have your knees together and your feet apart. And then draw your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom. Just a gentle massage on the spine. And then just straighten out your legs. Just come up onto your elbows for a moment, just so that you know that you're in a really good straight line right down the centre of your mat. And then just guide yourself down. Just let your eyes close, let the feet fall apart. Just spend a moment just releasing into the ground. Letting go of the muscles of the arms and the legs.
Just allowing the body to completely relax into the ground. Focusing on long, slow, deep, deliberate breaths. Just observe the feeling of energetic lightness that radiates from the bones and into the muscles. Using the breath to draw that energy into the toes, into the fingers, and all the way up into the top of the head. And then when you're ready, just gently wriggle your toes, wriggle your fingers, just bring yourself back into this pose of shavasana. And then bend your knees in toward your chest, just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom. And then gently roll over onto your right side. Just stay down for a breath or two. And then straighten out the top leg, come back up into a seated position. Just a final cross legs with your hands in the masti. Just a final spinal lift. Drawing your breath in through your nose down into the abdomen. Be conscious of the energy that you have released through your practice this morning. That good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy that the extensions and the forward bends and the twists and the reclining poses bring to the body and to the mind. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Just spend a moment to acknowledge the positive energy you've created inside. And then send some of that positive energy out into the world. And then gently release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. And then as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. Thank you. So hopefully you feel as though you've really lifted your energy and maybe you've sharpened your attention a little, just giving you some good positive energy to put into
into your body. So thank you very much for joining me.